Welcome back to Bonkers For Boro. Well, it was a disappointing night at the Riverside Stadium, and like so many Middlesbrough fans, I, for one, am feeling a little bit tired, a little bit jaded after what was a rather entertaining match at the Riverside Stadium, but ultimately one that didn't go the way of Michael Carrick's team. Of course, Middlesbrough fell to a 3-2 defeat against Sunderland at the Riverside. It was a pulsating match. Neither team looked fully convincing, you've got to say. It was a game of mistakes, but a game of lots of goals as well. And Middlesbrough looked like decent value to get something from the game, but ultimately the game ended in a sickening way, with Sunderland securing a late winner thanks to a Ryan Giles own goal. We will get onto that a little bit later, onto the own goal and what it sort of means for Middlesbrough. But at the time of recording, it was just a really disappointing night. Personally, I'm normally fairly quick at sort of bouncing back from these sorts of defeats. I'm quite able to kind of like put things in perspective in the wider scheme of things, but there was a real sting from that match last night. Coming out of it, having lost it, I think it felt like a draw was probably a fair result, but the way that Middlesbrough lost it in the end, obviously watching Sunderland celebrating at the end of the match and just sort of knowing what it means for Middlesbrough in terms of this season made it a really quite bitter pill to swallow. But I think when you look at the match overall, it was fairly even. As I said, a draw was probably a fair sort of result. Middlesbrough started the game firmly on top. It took probably a good while for Sunderland to turn up at all, really. Middlesbrough were really dominant early on. Obviously, got the goal through Delano Bergsorg, and we had a couple of opportunities, which in hindsight was really quite pivotal in the match. If we'd been able to take maybe one more of those sort of opportunities, I know that Marcus Forss had a good header that was saved by Anthony Patterson. If that goal had gone in, it could have been a completely different contest. Sunderland really didn't look in it, but then Dan Neal's deflected strike that went in, it really just buoyed the Sunderland fans and buoyed the Sunderland players. And from that point on, it was a real contest. It was an entertaining game, you've got to say, from the neutral. I think both teams were looking to get the ball down and play. Both teams were equally unable to play out from the back. There was some shocking build-up play from goal kicks. Sunderland's were no better than Middlesbrough's, really. A lot of times Anthony Patterson was passing it out to Luke O'Nien, and they were under immediate pressure from Delano Bergsorg and Marcus Forss in particular, who were closing them down with Hayden Hackney pushing on. And Middlesbrough did get a couple of opportunities to come from that, but it was very similar at the other end of the pitch. Mark Travers frequently passing the ball to George Edmondson, who is just simply not a ball-playing defender. He doesn't get the nickname the Fridge for no reason, and it was just absolute suicide football sometimes. Passing it to Edmondson, expecting him to be able to play out from the back. And it's not really a knock on Edmondson because it's just not his natural game. So I think sometimes you've just got to show a little bit of football intelligence and tweak your game plan slightly and not expect someone like George Edmondson to be able to play out from the back. Maybe pass it to someone else, someone who is slightly more capable on the ball, and let George Edmondson stick to what he's best at, which is sort of more typical old school defending. So that led to a number of opportunities for Sunderland. It was a game full of errors and full of some decent football, but ultimately it was Sunderland who ended up getting the results. You can see from these stats here just how even the match was, really. Middlesbrough, they shaded possession, equal amount of shots. Sunderland had better quality shots, you've got to say. They had 9 shots on target out of their 12, which was significantly more than Middlesbrough on the evening. An equal number of big chances. Passes fairly equal as well. Fouls committed fairly equal as well. Sunderland had a few more corners, and I'd probably say that by the end of the match, I was talking about this with my father-in-law, actually. He was saying that a draw would have probably been a fair result. I'd probably say that based on the quality of chances, I thought that Sunderland probably shaded it, but it didn't really change how disappointing it was and the manner it came in with that late goal, that own goal from Ryan Giles, which again we'll get onto it in just a little second. But just a really disappointing night for Middlesbrough, and one which I think it feels like more than just a defeat. Not because it's a derby game, not because of about that match in isolation, but just sort of how it frames the second half of the season, really. I think it really kind of means that Middlesbrough are going to be up against it in the months ahead. And I think for fans, it was a little bit sobering as well of sort of where we are at the moment, and what the potential challenges are going to be in the next couple of months. Now, a lot of the other plaudits are going to this man in particular, Enzo Le Fee, who, being impartial, he was absolutely incredible. I don't know how Sunderland managed to sign him. He's on a loan deal until the end of the season with an obligation to sign him for 20 million if Sunderland get promoted, and he was just absolutely incredible. There was a couple of good performances in that Sunderland team, to be fair. Wilson Isidore caused a lot of problems for Middlesbrough's defence. He caught George Edmondson out for his goal. George Edmondson tried to catch him offside, and it just didn't work because Isidore's so much faster, and his direct running in behind allowed him to run through and goal and score. Jobe Bellingham, I thought, grew into the game. He was a little bit quiet in the first half, but in the second half he did start to dictate things. And my God, is he a chip off the old block in terms of comparisons to his brother Jude. He was, the way that he carries the ball, it was really, really impressive sometimes. Just his balance for someone who's quite a tall, strapping young man. It was just quite incredible, and very much like his brother Jude. Enzo Le Fee just had a brilliant night on the left side. Against Luke Ayling, it was always going to be a tricky battle for the Middlesbrough fullback. Luke Ayling, he's not blessed with pace. He is getting on a little bit. So I think when he was coming up against such a sprightly, such a technically gifted young player in Enzo Le Fee, it was going to be a tricky one. And to be fair, he probably handled it reasonably well for the most part. You've got to say, for most of the game, he was able to stop him causing too many massive problems. But obviously that winning goal for Sunderland, the clip's been going around endlessly on social media. It feels like every second tweet on my timeline at the moment is a clip of that goal. And I sit in the east stand at the Riverside, and it was very impressive. That first touch just completely took it away from Ayling, and that turn of pace. There was no way that Ayling was going to catch him. It was the speed of thought, but also the speed of his the speed of his feet as well, which kind of took him away from him. He had plenty of space. He whipped the ball into the other far post, and Ryan Giles was obviously charging back towards his own goal, and thundered the ball past his own goalkeeper, Mark Travers, which allowed Sunderland to secure the win. So Enzo Le Fee was brilliant. Obviously, we're not here to talk about Sunderland, and for Middlesbrough, it was just maybe a bit of a wake-up call as to where we are defensively. Obviously, it was transfer deadline day. The transfer window shut around about an hour after the Sunderland match finished, and just the real feeling on social media is just about, yes, Middlesbrough have had a really good transfer window in terms of bringing in attacking players, but have they addressed the areas in the team that needed to be addressed? Defensively, it's no secret. Anyone who has watched Middlesbrough any amount of times this season knows fine well that it's Middlesbrough's defence, which is our Achilles heel at the moment. We've got good attacking players. We've got players who can score goals against just about anyone in the Championship. It's defensively where we come unstuck, and ultimately that's the reason why we are where we are in the league. We'll get onto that in just a little bit as well. We are chasing the top six at the moment. We're not currently in the top six. For me, I think we need to solidify that defence if we are going to be able to get the sort of sustained run of results that we need to really cement that top six finish. I mean, that defeat to Sunderland completely ends any hope of getting anywhere near the top two. It seemed very, very unlikely for a little while, but now there's a gap of 14 points between Middlesbrough and Sunderland. Both Sunderland and Burnley, I think it is, both 14 points ahead of Middlesbrough. So you've got to say that third and fourth place in the playoffs seem very, very unlikely at the moment. And for Middlesbrough, it's that defensive worrying. You just sort of wonder and worry if Middlesbrough have made a mistake in terms of how they've gone about this transfer, going into this transfer window. Yes, like I said, there's been a lot of brilliant attacking players come into the club. Morgan Whittaker, he wasn't great against Sunderland, but I do think he'll come good as a really good signing. Iling-Junior, he looked bright in the second half against Sunderland, so I'm quite excited to see what he can do over the next few months. Obviously, we've been able to keep hold of Ben Doak. We've also brought in Kelechi Iheanacho, who has had a difficult couple of seasons but can score a lot of goals. Obviously, he'll be a replacement for Emmanuel Latiolaf. That move to Atlanta looks like it's all but set to be announced any sort of time now. So plenty of exciting attacking players, but the fact that we almost seem weaker defensively than what we did at the start of the transfer window. Selling Matt Clark to Derby makes sense on one hand. He was slightly down the pecking order. He did have his limitations, but for me, is he any worse than what George Edmondson is? No, I personally would probably say that Matt Clark was maybe more solid than what George Edmondson is. So to lose him was a bit of a blow, and to not replace him certainly was even more of a blow. I personally thought that we would have been able to go out and bring in a replacement, someone who was even someone of a younger profile, someone who was a bit more comfortable on the ball. I thought that would be the sort of game plan for what we would do there. But the match against Sunderland just sort of highlighted those defensive frailties. We brought in Ryan Giles. Obviously, everyone knows what Ryan Giles is so good at, and that's going forward and whipping balls into the box. And we did see that quite a lot, particularly in the first half against Sunderland. It was really encouraging to just see a left back bombing forward and getting in there and getting the balls into the box, and that was really good to see. But with Ryan Giles, there is the flip side, and he is defensively vulnerable, and that's okay if there's cover elsewhere in the team. But at the moment, it just feels like there's a real sort of lack of quality. And ultimately, that's where Middlesbrough came unstuck last night. Luke Ayling against Enzo Le Fee was always going to be a tough battle. It was always going to be one that Le Fee was going to come out on top in. And you just sort of wonder what that means for the second half of the season and how we'll be able to tackle these games that we need to win, because we are soft. We are very easy to play against. Teams will be able to score goals against us. And for me, it puts a huge amount of pressure on our attacking players, knowing that we need to almost outscore the opposition. I know that's it's football. You obviously always need to outscore the opposition, but if you're vulnerable to conceding 1-2 goals every single match, it's a lot of pressure for your attacking players to have to score 2, 3, 4 goals to get something from a game. That's not going to be able to happen every single time, and that's why I'm a little bit worried about what we've done in the transfer window. I've digressed in this section a little bit. I will be doing more of a deep dive on the transfer window in the next few days. But I think obviously, given the fact that it was on deadline day, and it just sort of really highlighted for me that sort of frailty, and that's why the result sort of stung a little bit for me personally. Obviously, Michael Carrick. He's got getting a little bit of heat as a result of that Sunderland match, but also as a kind of continuation of a worrying trend that's been growing over the last couple of months. Just that inability to devise a plan B, to be able to nullify the threat of an opponent in a match. Sunderland, obviously, they went 2-1 up at the Riverside, and they were obviously their tails were up. They were all over it. They were pushing forward. They were trying to get another goal, and we were just we were saying in the stand, we need to take the sting out of this game. We need to have 5-10 minutes where we just slow things down, stop them from building that momentum that they were already building, and just kind of like get the game back into a sort of safe, slower, slightly more pedestrian sort of tempo. And it just didn't happen. We were just trying to play out from the back again and trying to do what we'd always sort of been doing. And you do sort of worry that that could potentially be a real downfall for Middlesbrough in the second half of the season. That sort of inability to manage games and the inability to do what needs to be done to get the results, kind of putting your principles aside for not even an entire game, but even just for like 10-15 minute spells to be able to ride out a particular storm. It's something that Middlesbrough haven't really been able to do this season. We don't really have that sort of plan B. I do think people are kind of catching on to it now with Michael Carrick. They know how he plays, and they know that there's a real sort of like lack of tactical variation in terms of how Middlesbrough do things. So opposition teams know that. They know how to play against Middlesbrough, and they know how to nullify our threat, and they know how to punish us as well, because they know that Middlesbrough are vulnerable defensively. I think also what kind of irks me is when you get into these press conference scenarios and you get into post-match interviews, and I don't know, it's a fine balance as a manager. You can't come out and speak with total emotion. You can't come out and say exactly what you're sort of thinking. You do need to protect your players. You need to protect the club. I've worked in sports journalism for a long time. I know exactly how it works. I know how managers kind of operate. Some managers are more open than others, but it is a risky game to sort of be so disconnected and so kind of I don't know, almost like cold with your reactions when, particularly after a derby game like the one against Sunderland, fans were naturally upset at losing such a game. Fans are naturally upset at the fact that we've got a team which, in my personal opinion, our squad should be capable of being in that top 4 teams in the Championship. We are that good. We've got that high a quality of player that we should be in there. But when, I don't know, when Carrick comes out and speaks after the game, and it's very much like sort of saying about how well Middlesbrough have played and lessons that need to be learned, and saying, oh, we'll be better next time and we'll try again. And is he worried about form? And it's like, no, I'm not. Should Middlesbrough have signed another defender? Or are we a little bit vulnerable defensively? No, I'm quite happy with it. It's like, well, how can you be happy with it when we keep conceding these sorts of goals? We are so open. Every team in the Championship knows us, and I feel like it's going to be our stumbling block. And I just sort of worry that there might be a slight stubbornness to Michael Carrick, which is sort of stopping Middlesbrough from moving forward and being able to progress into genuine promotion candidates. We're always going to be the team who can go out and we're capable of thumping anyone 3-4-0. We've got the attacking players to be able to do so. But when it comes to securing promotion, we saw it in the Karanka season that you need to have a solid foundation of how you go into these games. With Karanka, you knew that going into any match, you knew that you pretty much weren't going to be conceding more than 0-1 goals, perhaps something like that. So you knew that basically if you were able to score a goal, the vast majority of times you were going to be coming away from something or coming away with something from that game. But you don't really have that with Michael Carrick. You don't know what Middlesbrough side are going to turn up. You don't know how Middlesbrough are going to be able to handle how the opposition handle Middlesbrough. If teams sit deep, Middlesbrough are unable to break them down. We also know that Middlesbrough are vulnerable defensively. So if teams can get at Middlesbrough, particularly down the flanks where we are vulnerable at down the left and right, it does mean that Middlesbrough are in a situation where we are very, very vulnerable. And I think just that sort of slight stubbornness is a bit of a worry for me at the moment. I know that this is turning into a bit of a therapy session for me, and it's probably coming off the back of that result against Sunderland, where emotions are sort of high. But I do sort of worry about what's going to happen in the second half of the season. From my point of view, we've gone all out in the transfer market. We've brought in some brilliant attacking players, and there's been some serious business done. Defensively, I think we look frail. I think we look vulnerable. But that ultimately that's what Middlesbrough have decided to do. That's how they've gone about the transfer window. They've opted to put all their eggs in the attacking basket by bringing those players in. So in the next couple of months, you better pray that those attacking players turn up and they're able to outperform what our defence is able to do. They need to be able to go out and win these matches, because if Middlesbrough don't get in the top 6, for me, that probably puts Michael Carrick under quite a bit of pressure, because, as I said, our team is more than capable of being at least in the top 6. I personally think the squad should be capable of getting into the top 4. As I've mentioned, I think that's highly, highly unlikely now, given the 14 gap between us and Sunderland and Burnley. But for me, it's going to be a really, really important few months for Michael Carrick in particular, because he needs to get this team performing. He needs to get us into the top 6. And for me, if we don't get into the top 6 with the squad that we've got, I do feel like it might be a case of a decision possibly needing to be made, because we do have the players capable of challenging for promotion, and we need someone who is able to get this team over the line in more games than what we're doing at the moment. That's not me saying that I think Michael Carrick should be sacked. I think he's capable. He has done it in games where he's been able to manage them more carefully. We saw it just not that long ago against West Brom, where he was able to play the game to perfection. It was a tactical, I don't want to say a masterclass, that's probably over-egging it, but he really got it right on that evening, and he is capable of doing it. We saw it last season against Leicester City away, when it looked like Leicester were just going to blow us away, and he got the game plan absolutely right. He just needs to do that a little bit more often. He needs to get that balance right between defence and attack, making sure that we're not just leaving our defence wide open and relying on the attack to outscore the opposition. We need to make sure that we are able to go out there and gain results on a consistent basis. It's no good winning one week, losing the next. We need to be able to build a bit of an unbeaten run, even if it means drawing a few games that we would have previously lost. We do need to gain those points, build that momentum, and that will ultimately be what gets us into the top 6. If we can't do that and we keep losing too many games, then it's going to be a real struggle. And that's what my sort of worry is with regards to Michael Carrick in the second half of the season. So, yeah, as I mentioned, Middlesbrough 14 points off the other top 4. That's gone as far as I'm concerned. We're not going to get into the top 4 now. Yeah, you're looking at the table there, and there's just so much competition. I mean, I've only clipped up the other top 12 there, but when you get into the bottom half of the table, there's a lot of teams on 40 points and 39 points. So there's a lot of competition there. Middlesbrough, it's fine. We're in 7th place at the moment. We're out there on a technicality. We're level on points with West Brom, so there's still a lot of time to go and a lot of points to be played for. But for Middlesbrough, they need to get it right. They need to make sure that we have that balance right. And as I said, defensively, we look very, very vulnerable. It seems very hard to see now that the transfer window's closed in particular. It seems really tricky to see how Middlesbrough are going to be able to sort of solidify that defence, notably from what we have done in the first half of the season. So for me, it puts some real pressure on our attacking players. We do have the quality at the club. We've got so many attacking options there now. Like I said, we've got Iheanacho's come in and Iling-Junior. We've also got Ben Doak, although he's sidelined for a few weeks with injury. We've got Morgan Whittaker, Delano Bergzog's playing excellently. I know I haven't mentioned him really, but he did really well against Sunderland, another really good performance. He's probably been Middlesbrough's best player, in my opinion, since December. He's been that good. So he's done really well. We've also got people like Finn Azaz. He's been a bit quiet, but we could maybe see a bit more from him. But yeah, Middlesbrough's attacking players really need to turn up in the next few weeks to make sure that we are winning these games, because we need to build some momentum. We need to build some confidence to get into that top 6 and make sure that we stay there. So I want to hear from you. It was a really disappointing result, a really disappointing performance. I'm aware this video, it was meant to be a really measured video. It's kind of turned into a little bit of a therapy session for me, so I apologize for that. But let me know what you thought about the Sunderland game. Let me know what you thought about how Middlesbrough performed and ultimately what you think it means for the second half of the season. If you have enjoyed this video, please do hit like, comment below, let me know what you thought of the match. And if you have enjoyed it as well, then do hit subscribe as well. There's going to be plenty more videos coming in the coming days and weeks. I'm hoping to do a more thorough transfer recap of the transfer window, so stay tuned for that. But in the meantime, hit subscribe and I will catch up with you next time.